Food and Wine Insider is a weekly look at a $1.5 trillion industry touching every American. Devoted to the business of purveying food and decanting wines, Food and Wine Radio is a unique program. Visit us at foodandwineinsider.com.
You know, and we go to a fancy food show to see what's new and what's different, and sometimes we run into unusual companies, first and second generation companies. Jamie Stachowski has a meat company out of Washington, D.C., that's now entering its second generation of leadership. He's here now to talk about his company, his transition, and a lot more. And welcome, Jamie Stachowski.
Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Jamie, as Don just said, he's the owner of Stachowski's Brand Charcuterie, and he also has a market in deli in Georgetown. And I also welcome you to Food and Wine Insider. Chef, you were born and raised in Buffalo, New York, and your Polish family made its own sausage, corned beef, and pastrami. Please talk a little bit about your journey from there to D.C.
Sure. I come from a sort of a culinary family in that on one side of the family, my grandfather was a farmer, and we raised birds and veal. We did the processing on the farm, and usually, as a Polish family, rather large. So we divided the labor and the spoils amongst the family. 9 uncles and 20-something cousins or grandchildren, and so everybody participated. And therefore, we raised specifically ducks, capons, and veal calves, and then we would, as I said, process them on the farms. And the children took part in every bit of it. And then on the other side, my other grandfather, he was a restaurant owner. And so we kind of grew up in that environment, too. Transitioned from school into the kitchen. I loved the kitchen. My parents weren't too happy at the time. This was like the mid to late 70s. But I fell in love with it. I just wasn't the class guy, sit in the chair and recite formulas and things. I'd rather be moving around. I loved the kitchen. I always hung out in the kitchen and participated in holiday dinners preparation with my mother. Anyhow, after that, I discovered French kitchens, and that was it. I just fell in love with the whole thing and saw my first French chef in that stiff white coat, and all these young, beautiful girlfriends, and I was smitten. I was like, I want to be that guy. And
Well, Chef, I think what's really interesting about your background is you didn't go to cooking school, but you learned essentially on the job from seriously tough chefs like Jean-Louis Paladin. What did you learn from him, and what was the best advice he ever gave you?
The single best piece of advice that I still adhere to today and tell all young cooks: taste your food. Taste your food. He tasted every single thing that went out of a kitchen, constantly tasting and adjusting the seasoning on a sauce, a soup, just making sure that meat was cooked perfectly. It just is, it's unbelievable how simple of a statement it is, but it is the single most powerful tool that, anybody in the kitchen can use, especially in a restaurant, because you're doing this repetitively so much that it can just become so automatic and just easily forgotten. But it's the single most important. It's taste it. Then you'll know. You'll have positive identification. Does it need more salt? Is it hot enough? Or whatever, or what have you. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that one right there.
Now, it's my understanding that I think I was kind when I said seriously tough chefs, but I think his temperament was fairly volatile. He might have passed that on a little bit to you, but that came from an expectation of very high standards. What do people who work for you come to expect?
Well, they don't really, it's the people who have worked with me, and I have employees who've been around for a long time, 11 years, 10 years, a dozen years, 7 years. Those people know. They know that execution is everything. Recipes, it doesn't matter what the recipe is, just like a system. We'll pick any system, pick any recipe, it's execution. And it doesn't have to be truffles and foie gras. It could be a peanut butter sandwich. But if the bread is toasted just right, maybe you made the peanut butter, maybe you made the jam, you put the right amount in. Everything is execution. And it's got to be very regimented, yes. That's the thing. I think people are surprised when they first come to work in any one of our organizations how regimented everything has to be. The salt is here, not 2 inches over. It is exactly here. Your towels are exactly there. Everything has a place, and it's got to be right there. It's just there's so many moving parts in the food organization and the food operation, and it's perishable, it's delicate, it's fragile, it's dangerous, it's so everything has to be just right, just so, and that's even more so if you're in a restaurant situation, if you're in a restaurant kitchen, bringing together 5 different dishes for a table of 5 at the same time. It's like, conducting an orchestra, and every note has to come at the right time, not a second or a beat too late, right then. So that's what that is. And it's the same thing at the deli or when you're producing, 2,000 pounds of a particular pâté or sausage. Everything has to be right in place.
Mm-hmm. Your son also works with you. If I asked him, what would he say? What would he say about working for his dad?
It's probably going to be a mixed bag. The next generation wants to be better, and they are. They're smarter, they're better. They get the benefit of having somebody beaten the path a little bit down for them, Somebody's walked that path a little bit already, so it's a little worn. They didn't whack the tough, weeds and branches and chop down the big trees and stuff. So they get the benefit of a little bit of that already happening. And then they're smart. They're smart. They grow up in this information age, so they're the smart ones are. Now some people are lazy, but the ones who have ambition, they're all smart. So the ones who use that, have ambition and use it, they'll go a little bit further. They'll be a little bit more efficient. They'll figure out a little bit better way, to, a little easier way maybe, a little bit better flavor. They'll get it. I'm sure he talks, he'll, on one hand, he'll be, Jamie's this way and Jamie's that way. And then, he's been around long enough. He's 30 and he's been working with me ever since he was 11. And so he's been around to see plenty of kitchens and chefs and things. And he's like, no, Jamie, his tough attitude, there's a reason for it. And now he sees, yes, you have to.
Yeah. Well, we've been talking with Jamie Stachowski, who's the owner of Stachowski's Brand Charcuterie and a market in deli in Georgetown. I wanted to talk a little bit about the deli in the market. What do you feel makes it really distinctive from what else is out there?
The retail market, or
yes,
talking about wholesale products?
No, your deli in Georgetown.
Well, one thing for sure that Washington, in my opinion, just briefly, Washington has recently become a food town. Mm-hmm. The problem was that it was mostly transient, and so people would know good food because they came from all over the country, but they were only going to be here for a while. Administrations change, people and go. They'd go back home. So they'd miss their pastrami in New York, or their sausages from Chicago, or their barbecue from the South or the West. And they would put up with that until they left and went back home. Now people are staying here, longer, or even, just staying, period. So they're like, no, now we want that. So they bring that here. That flourishes. That, there's staying power now for food entities, restaurants and whatnot.
Yeah.
Anyhow, so Georgetown neighborhood used to have a few places similar to ours, but it's been void of that for a couple of decades, if not longer. There used to be a French place up the street. Okay, could go a couple of decades. Anyhow, it was lacking that. The people certainly hunger for it. They're very well traveled, so they know good food, and they're hungered for it. And we have a very well received because of that. But the biggest thing I think that separates us from probably 90% of delis, if not more, is the fact that we make all those sausages. We make all those pâtes that are sold in there. We make most of the deli meats that are in our cases. That's the biggest difference. All that charcuterie, ham, salami, sausages, we make those.
Chef, I have to have you tell the story of how you went about finding a good pastrami or chicken liver sandwich for lunch when you were running Restaurant Columbia. Do you mind telling us that story? Because I thought it was pretty funny. Also indicates the level of passion you have for finding the best,
Well, yeah, chefs can seem eccentric and maybe irrational sometimes, but as I said, food demands it because it is so delicate and fragile. You have to go to extremes to get it. And just quite simply, one day I just had a hunger. When you just have a hunger for a certain food item or a flavor, I don't care what it is. It could be a chocolate bar, or it could be, a piece of a pastry or something, like this. But I was just like, doggone, man, I want a chopped chicken liver sandwich. I'm like, there used to be a couple of Jewish delis down here in Washington, and there used to be a bunch of them, and they just all went away. I don't know what happened, with the old guard of things. I could speak. That's probably for another show. I have a theory on a lot of that, but basically they went away, and I drove all around Washington to the 2-3, couldn't find them, and I just said, heck with it. I know where I can find one, and it's 80th and Broadway. And so I just jumped on 95 after lunch, and I just drove. I was gunning it. I think I made it to New York in like under 4 hours. I'm serious.
Oh, my God.
I drove all the way up there to 80th and Broadway. God, it's escaping me, the deli that's up there right now. It's across the street from Zabar's. It'll come to me before the interview. And I was just like, I got a pastrami sandwich, or I got chopped chicken liver, nothing, just rye bread, scoop of chicken liver. I sat down there, then I got up and I was like, pastrami, please. Give me a bunch of pastrami, hold the bread. And I did that, scratched my itch, and I just said, give me some more to go. I took it, got back in the car, started driving down, and then I was like, well, I got to stop in South Philly and grab a couple of pies. So I went to South Philly, got a couple of pizzas, extra large, and just got back. Dinner service was over at my restaurant, but I was like, here, everybody. I got some pastrami, chopped chicken liver, and a couple of pizzas for everybody. But I just when I had got that itch, it's just like nothing was going to stop me, and I just got on 95 and hit it.
So that's Which thank you for sharing that story because I thought it was just like really fantastic. You've also created Stachowski's Brand Charcuterie. Talk a little bit about why you started that business and the types of products you're offering.
All right, this is the best thing. This is the deal. So as I became a young chef, this is back in the day, and you said I didn't go to school. Well, by the time I was out in Los Angeles, I was working for Wolfgang Puck, Claude Segal, Joachim Spichel from the Patina Group, all these guys. And I didn't really know. You know, once you start working with one of these chefs, what they do is they pass you off to another one. You do, you do your 1 year stint with this one chef, and then, you go and, hey, this guy's opening a place or he needs somebody, and then, that chef would pass you off like that, and you were just an apprentice, whatever, making cook salary, but you're a kid, you don't care. You're eating, you're drinking, you're living and breathing it. All you want to do is work and sleep and maybe with the boys have a few pops at the end of the night, but you're, 20, 21, 22, 18, 19. But anyhow, back then, in these French kitchens, the brigade was made up of all certified people, garde-manger, poissonnier, saucier, charcutier. All these people were certified in their specific positions. So as you went along, you're like, all right, you're working with the butcher today. And, he had his recipes, and he's like, okay, we're going to make some sausage today, and this is one of the things that, God knows, I mean, I'm dyslexic and ADD as the rest of the misfits who work in that industry, but for some reason I wrote down all these recipes. Pastry chef, whoever I was with, I just scribbled them down, and so I'd have all these, pâté recipes, sausage recipes, saucisson recipes, papillettes, gallantines, whatever it was. I just, wrote it down and made little drawings and sketches. Okay, so time goes by, French cuisine, this classic cuisine goes away, and the next thing you know, for 20 years, all we're eating is sun-dried tomatoes, fried calamari, and balsamic vinegar. God help me if those flavors come across my lips anymore. I can't. But then, okay, so I had all that stuff. We had a restaurant on K Street, right there where all the lobbyists and the lawyers were. Big suits, as we call them, and they'd come in every evening at 5 o'clock at the bar. We had a beautiful bar, beautiful Czech and Ukrainian bartenders. They were lovely, beautiful. And then all the big suits would come in, and the martinis would reemerged again in the the 2000 in the yachts there. And my wife was manager of the front. She was like, hey, you got to make some appetizers for these big guys, these big suits, and don't give me like cheese puffs, they want meat. So she was the one who was like, and so me and my wife, we'd been together for 30 some years, and so she knew my whole career. She knew what I could do and everything, and she was like, pull out some of those charcuterie recipes right now. Make some, some saucissons, make some smoked sausage, make some pâtés. And so she developed it, and I got to give her credit. She was the one who came up with the idea of the butcher board, and it just grew from like 2-3 items up to 21 items, So these guys would come in groups from these lobbyist firms or these law firms or investing firms. They'd come in groups of like 8, 9, or 10 or whatever, and they'd like give us 2 full, butcher boards, as we call them. And they'd just be, just loaded with various meats, cut, smoked, grilled, salami, sausages, pâtés. And then we got kind of renowned for it, really. And then all that charcuterie was taken off all over. All kinds of chefs wanted to do it. And and the term charcuterie doesn't just pertain to making salami. It's working and crafting all kinds of meat, which is great for chefs because all the primary cuts were getting too expensive to use on your menu, so you would double it up. For example, you would say you would put duck 2 ways on your menu, some slices of margray, and then you'd put some confit on there, or you made a little duck sausage, duck 3 ways, so it would help offset the cost of this entree or whatnot. But so we sold our restaurant there in 2007. And it's just funny how it transitioned. My wife, we've been working these restaurants and owning some restaurants and just doing it for years. And she said, hey, do me a favor, take a year off of, from chefing. And I was like, sure, great. What am I going to do then? Well, lo and behold, word got out, and chefs would call me up and they say, hey, can you make me, 20 pounds of some French Toulouse? Would you make me some of this pheasant pâté that you would make? And I'm like, sure. I remember when we sold our restaurant, I kept a couple of choice pieces of equipment that would help me. And we had this big garage at our house, and the next thing you know, I was a garagiste chef.
Stachowski, and who has Stachowski's Brand Charcuterie, and you were talking a lot about trends. It's very interesting. Things go into fashion, and you were talking about sun-dried tomatoes and balsamic vinegar, and coming back to really wonderful sausages and pâtés and terrines and so on, and which, by the way, I happen to adore. Really good pâtés and terrines and sausages. Yeah. Do you think, talking about trends, do you think there's a trend back to butcher shops where people can really appreciate meat versus, okay, I just, grab it out of the supermarket or whatever? What do you think on that?
Yes, I do think that, because I think what's happening here is that it's for people who are conscientious or conscious of it, it's quality over quantity is what I think your people want. And you can, the difference is tangible in meat. If not reflected in the eye, it's reflected on the palate. And people are getting more savvy and more knowledgeable to quality and what they like. They just are. Now you have young people whose parents have been foodies. So, these people, this generation, it has grown up with quality. And so they could go into a generic grocery store and pick up a large pack of meat, steaks that, if they can't, maybe they don't know USDA grading to see now. By now their parents have shown them what a good quality piece of meat looks like and tastes like. So I do believe there is a move back to that. And within that, you can break it down to, gradings of quality meat, humane ratings, packaging. As I said, there's a bunch of different ways to quantify quality. But I do believe now that these generations of people, we're a couple generations into quality of food and meat, and they know it and they want it. And as I said, a good piece of meat, as I say to people, they don't have to buy, 3-pound steaks and things like this. God knows me and my wife will split one New York strip between the both of us. But it's a quality piece of meat, seasoned correctly, cooked at 2-3 bites and a glass of wine, and you're satisfied. Because as I tell everybody, satisfaction happens on the palate, not in the gullet.
Chef, I think I probably only have a few more minutes to have this chat, though it's been fantastic. What do you think the future holds for your business, and what other ways would you like to expand? What are the things that you're saying, gee, I really would like to do that at some point?
Well, I'm not interested in skyrocketing growth, I mean, if you ask my son, he would probably say differently. But I more or less am worried or concerned and focused on the quality check, constant quality check, quality, upping the quality, we'll argue on what meat to buy to produce a certain thing. You know, do we want to save a few pennies, or do we want to be known for a better flavor, a better texture? You know, so this is where my focus is. Yes, I love to expand. We're in Harris Teeter down here in the South. That's our largest sort of, say, grocery store chain. Yes, we're always looking to expand. But for me personally, my focus is always on quality. And that can be better meat, better equipment, better, execution. And that's, working with employees, to show them how to, have it better, how to create a better product.
And I have a feeling you're a long way from retiring, but what do you see as Joseph's future in the business?
I mean, he's got to continue on because, at some point, you're right. I will always stay active, but, at some point, just send me a check and the rest is yours.
So I hope I have a chance. Yeah, that's good. I hope I have a chance for one last question. Yes, I'm sure. What advice would you give to someone wanting to be in the charcuterie business or the boulanger business?
Gosh. Once you learn the craft, then there's the business aspects of it. And it just takes its time. I always tell people, you've got to be patient, in business, a lot of people, give up. They give up. And it's, there's a lot of things that can stand in your way. Hey, believe me, working with the USDA is no joke. I can't do it. I couldn't do it because it requires a lot of science. We sent my son, and he didn't want to go. He himself, he was a boy either. But I was like, look, man, these are restaurant recipes. Now you have to change them, transform them into a USDA formulation. You need some science and you need some schooling. So I would send them to Wisconsin, Virginia Tech, Iowa State University, meat schools, to learn meat science, because that's what you need. They don't have patience, and neither should they. Nor should they. Those are U.S. taxpayer dollars, so they don't have patience. Why should they have patience for somebody like me with like 2 cups of it? No. They want to show. They want studies that back up my E. coli reduction, and things like this. Anyhow, it's perseverance. That's all. And it's something that either you want it or you don't want it. First you got to learn the craft. You got to have the knowledge. And that just takes time. And time takes time. I always tell these people, it took me 30 years to learn this stuff. What makes you think you're going to learn it in 30 days? Please, even with the internet. So it's just patience, perseverance, the craft, learn the science. That's why a lot of these companies you'll find are generational. There's a lot of people in there because you've got to have some help in passing down information and systems and things like this.
Well, I think that's great advice, and I'm going to turn it back to Don. Thank you so much, Chef Stachowski of Stachowski Brand Charcuterie.
We have been talking with Jamie Stachowski of Stachowski Meats. Jamie, before we go any further, a website our listeners can call you on or talk, see your products?
They can call me on my phone if you want. My phone number is 202-506-7355. You can go to Stachowski Brand Charcuterie or StachowskiBrand.com. That's our website. You can just Google Stachowski's and you'll see our store in Georgetown. It is well worth the trip to stop at Stachowski's.
Yeah, I've been listening to this your talk with Ann, and it's been fascinating. A link to your website will be on foodandwineinsider.com tonight, where you can hear this and every other program in our series. And happy to announce you can also download on iTunes now. If you have any suggestions, there's a little survey you can take on a survey to tell us the guests you'd like to hear. Jamie Stachowski, thank you so much for joining us. To be successful, most restaurant owners require extra capital from time to time. When you need funding to renovate, buy equipment, or manage cash flow, you don't have time to track down financial statements or wait weeks for a decision. That's where Kabbage can help. Kabbage gives small businesses access to a line of credit of up to $200,000. Apply online and you'll get a decision right away. Since Kabbage is a line of credit, you can take the exact amount you need. You never have to reapply to take additional loans, and you'll only pay for the funds you use. Kabbage has helped more than 230,000 businesses from every industry, and with $4 billion in funding, Kabbage is A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau and was named the Forbes Top 100 Companies twice in a row. Check out Kabbage at kabbage.com/food and wine, and you'll get a $50 gift card when you qualify. That's kabbage.com/food-and-wine.
Line of credit is subject to credit approval. See terms and conditions. All Kabbage business loans are issued by Celtic Bank, a Utah-chartered industrial bank, member FDIC.
You are listening to Ann Daw and Don Mazzella, and the program is Food and Wine Insider. If you have a question or know someone you think our listeners should hear, contact us at foodandwineinsider.com. Remember, our programs are heard every Wednesday and Saturday on this station via amfm247.com or on iHeartRadio, as well as Roku Television. You can listen to past shows at foodandwineinsider.com.
Rene Bollier is the third generation confiserie of Andre's Chocolates from Kansas City, Missouri. Welcome to Food and Wine Insider, Rene. Very nice to have you here.
Well, thanks for inviting me. I'm excited to be here.
Now, your grandparents emigrated from Basel, Switzerland to Kansas City in 1955 to open up a typical Swiss confiserie, creating confections in the Swiss tradition. I have to ask, why Kansas City?
That's a good question. I mean, when my grandparents decided they wanted to leave Switzerland to open a business of their own, they looked at many different parts of the world. My grandfather's brother was in Kansas City working for a Swiss watchmaker, and told my grandfather that Kansas City was a growing city and that the market was wide open, that there was really no competition when it came to luxury chocolates and pastries. And so they visited and fell in love with the city. 6 months after they arrived, they opened the first Andre's, and they realized really quickly that there was a reason there was no competition in Kansas City, and that was that there was no market for those products. People really didn't understand the European style of pastries and chocolates. And so basically the first 10 years of the existence of Andre's was devoted to educating the Kansas City public about what European-style chocolates and pastries were all about, and why they were better, what made them better, and why they were more expensive as well.
Yeah, and I definitely want to get into that because I think the American palate has been trained on what I would call compound chocolate, not true chocolate. So we're going to get into that in a little bit. You decided at a very young age to be the third generation in the business. Tell us why.
Why I chose to be part of the business at a very young age. Well, always had a love for the profession. My dad started bringing me in when I was about 5 years old, and I would cut out different shapes in chocolate and help put chocolate candies on our enrobing line. And I really just fell in love with the industry, fell in love with the creativity of it. And one thing my grandparents and parents did exceptionally well was create a really family environment at Andre's. So we have employees that have been with us for over 40 years, and that makes for a really fun work environment. So even in high school, when my dad was waking me up at 3 a.m. to come into work and help in production, I didn't want to get up at 3 a.m., but I always loved doing it because I really did enjoy the profession itself.
Mm-hmm. So back to product. What is it about Swiss chocolate that makes it so distinctive and truly the gold standard?
Well, the Swiss invented milk chocolate. There was a gentleman named Daniel Peter, who was the inventor of Swiss chocolate. He was actually a candle maker by trade who was put out of business by the invention of the kerosene lamp. And so in looking for a new profession, he had a father-in-law who was Nestle, and a neighbor who was a Nestle, who had just created the first baby formula or powdered milk, and then he had a father-in-law who was a Caille, which is a very predominant chocolate brand still in Switzerland, and so he combined the Caille dark chocolate and the Nestle milk powder to create the first successful milk chocolate. So the Swiss have always been very innovative when it comes to chocolate. What makes their chocolate very distinctive is the conching process they use. So when you make chocolate, one of the final steps is conching, which is basically just working the chocolate back and forth with either a marble or a metal roller, which rounds out all the flavors and releases all the acidity and volatility in the chocolate. But the Swiss have always done it for an extremely long time, so it makes for a very smooth mouthfeel on their chocolate, but it also, when you conch, you create heat, and so that heat actually caramelizes the sugars in the chocolate itself. So Swiss chocolate has always had a very caramely flavor opposed to other chocolates, which is one of the many things that I love about Swiss chocolate. I love that deep, rich caramel flavor that you can notice in the dark chocolates, but you really can see or notice those flavor profiles in the milk chocolates.
I think the next question was, do you conch your own chocolate? Because there's a lot of chocolate makers in the U.S. that are actually buying the chocolate that's already been made and then converting that either into truffles or adding their own elements and so on. But you're saying you still conch your own chocolate, which is a pretty serious process.
Well, and we do not conch our own chocolate ourselves. We actually work with a Swiss chocolate maker that that we created a proprietary blend with. So we kind of were able to dictate the exact flavor profile, the bean blend that we wanted, to create that very specific flavor profile that we were looking for at Andre's. But the whole process is not done at our facility in Kansas City. That is done actually in Switzerland.
So you still have this great connection back to your roots, which is fantastic.
We do. I mean, one of the stipulations for me coming into the business was that I was going to train as a pastry chef in Switzerland. So I spent 3 years over there training, and which really gave me a great appreciation of the Swiss art of making chocolate candies and pastries, and gave me a very broad sense of what is possible out there. If I had just only trained at Andre's and stayed in Kansas City, I could have gotten a phenomenal education about pastries and chocolates, but I would have only really seen what we do there. And by going over to Switzerland and working at a number of different chocolate factories, I was able to, or confectionery shops, I was able to see a great deal and learn a great deal, not only of the things that we do in Kansas City at Andre's, but also of what other pastry chefs are doing, which was phenomenal. And we continually go back to Switzerland. We try to go every year. to continue to see where the profession is going, and to make sure that we are staying as traditionally Swiss as possible. I mean, I always tell people that I really believe some of the longevity of Andre's comes from the fact that we never followed trends or worried about what was popular in the U.S. We just tried to do the best possible or produce the best possible products in the Swiss art form and stay very traditional in doing it.
Mm-hmm. Well, we've been talking with Rene Bollier. He's the third generation confissier of Andre's chocolates. And could you talk a little bit about where you then source the beans? Are you involved in that part of the process as well, or is that really done in Switzerland?
That's all done in Switzerland.
Mm-hmm.
The sourcing of the beans is the bean to bar explosion in the U.S. is absolutely amazing. I think some of the chocolates that small batch chocolates that people are making are really exceptional. We have discussed the opportunity of doing something like that, but at the same time, we have to realize there's only so many different balls that we can keep in the air and still ensure that the quality is second to none. So we contract for 40,000 pounds of chocolate a year, and to be able to produce that amount of chocolate ourselves and source those beans, that would be a full-time, whole separate company. And we just realized that the group, we use Clean chocolate, which is a great, really exceptional Swiss chocolate maker or chocolate company. But we do not get involved with it. Like I said, the only involvement is deciding what beans we're going to use and making sure that blend always stays the same. But they're in charge of sourcing the beans and ensuring that they're working with, high quality, fair trade producers in the different cocoa bean regions of the world.
So that's an important point in terms of the fair trade, especially in that particular industry. So I appreciate you sharing that. Andre's Confiserie Suisse has been a landmark in Kansas City for over 60 years, and you sell chocolate and pastries and torts and baked goods. You've also expanded into a coffee and wine bar. I'd love for you to talk about that and how it's helped to expand your business.
Yeah. So when my grandparents immigrated in 1955, and whether this is true or not, I always like to tell the story because I think it's interesting, but they were told by a friend that if they did not want to deal with the mob, that they should stay away from alcohol, that as soon as you put alcohol into your overall business plan, then you were going to have to deal with the mob in Kansas City. So he created his whole concept without any kind of alcohol in the business. We have a tea room that seats 100 that we serve mainly lunch in and then do special events. But that whole concept was created with no alcohol involved in it. Well, obviously over time that whole industry has changed, and we realized about 5 years ago that there was a great opportunity to incorporate wine specifically and other spirits into the overall model that we have at Andre's. So we did a pretty major renovation of the front retail area, and in that renovation opened up some space that was old office space and created a coffee and wine bar. And we've always, both my parents and my grandparents and my wife and I have always had a real passion for wine, have always loved the way it pairs really well with so much of the food that we do at Andre's. And so we opened that and about 4 years ago, and what it has done for the business is created this really neat environment in the front retail section. It's attracted a really a whole new group of clientele that come in specifically to try the wines. but then also to try the different pairings that we do, whether it be with our savory items like quiche, our ham and cheese croissant, things like that. And then we also do pairings with our chocolate, and which is really fun, which is not always easy to do because chocolate and wine can be complicated to pair well together, especially if you're talking about a big tannic red. It can be overpowering when it comes to the chocolate, but there are ways to do it, and it's been really fun to experiment and look at different ways to create those pairings, and then see people's reaction when they try them.
You know, I've seen even in Spain and some development here actually drinking chocolate. Are you doing anything in that area?
We are. So we have 4 different drinking chocolate blends that we've created. We have our signature that we've been making for years, and we do it all by hand. We make the mix ourselves. We still grate it on what we don't use for cheese, but it's like a big Hobart cheese grater, which is absolutely delicious. And when we opened the coffee and wine bar, we wanted to expand that drinking chocolate line. So now we do a chili spice, we do a ginger, and we do what we call a Grand Cru, which is a high cocoa content, single origin, dark chocolate. So it's a 72% from Madagascar. So very little sugar, just really intense chocolate flavor, which is my favorite by far. It just has really silky smooth flavor.
I need to have some of that right now. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how the company has grown in revenue from 1955 to now. It's a long time to be in business.
It is, and it's one of those things. I was just speaking with a young couple who has a startup chocolate company, and then we were talking about our 2 different businesses. And we at Andre's do have the advantage that we've been in business for a long time. So the business has grown substantially. I am very fortunate that my parents and grandparents were very conservative in the way they did business, so they really made an effort to always purchase property when they could and never built up a whole lot of debt, which enables my wife and I to really be creative with the business today. So over the years, we've grown in size substantially. Right now, we have about 25,000 square feet of production and retail space, and we have it all in one building in the Midtown Kansas City area, which is great because I'm able to, be in every part of the business when needed, and not having to transport different products from one place to another on a consistent basis. But so the business is really, obviously when my grandfather started out, it was all, hand done, a bowl of chocolate, a dipping fork, and you drop the chocolate truffle balls into the chocolate one at a time. And obviously that's changed dramatically. My father really put an emphasis on finding machinery, mainly Swiss or German machinery, that could help being more efficient without losing any kind of quality. And so he put a lot of emphasis on investing in that machinery, which has enabled us to grow exponentially, just because the efficiencies that machinery provides us really enables us to produce lots more than we could have, obviously, doing it by hand.
And can you tell us, just in general terms, how big from a revenue standpoint the business is today?
Well, the business from a revenue standpoint, we have sales of approximately $4 million annually, and that encompasses a little bit of everything. Retail is still our main focus. Retail is still where the majority of our revenue comes from. The Kansas City public has always been very supportive of what we do, and we really have amazingly loyal, phenomenal customers in Kansas City. What my wife and I are doing right now and putting emphasis on is more wholesale sales throughout the U.S. We used to have 5 different franchises throughout the U.S. in Denver and Menlo Park, California, St. Louis, and 2 in Houston. Those were all franchises and all very successful businesses that created a lot of work for us in Kansas City and never really enabled us to generate much income from them. The franchise owners were very successful, and it worked out well. But as those franchise owners got to retirement, we pulled the name, pulled back on that whole. So the last 20 years, we've really pulled back on the whole franchise part of the business, and now we're actively looking to partner with other retailers who might be interested in selling high quality Swiss chocolate. So, yeah.
And are you selling to the consumer directly online? And if so, is that growing?
It is, yeah. We sell. We have an online presence. It's www.andreschocolates.com, which is a great way to get our product direct to customers. The only disadvantage is, especially being in the Midwest, that in the heat of the summer it becomes very complicated or very expensive to get a small amount of chocolate from point A to point B, which again is one of the reasons why we're looking at partnering with other retailers. Because if we're shipping a large quantity, we can do it with dry ice and insulated packaging, and it all makes sense. When you're shipping a half-pound box of chocolates to direct to a consumer when it's 100 degrees out in August, it becomes very expensive. So our mail order business is really, really strong for the holiday months. During the summer months, it becomes almost stagnant just because we can't guarantee that we can get the product to the customer in that way and make sure that the quality is there.
Sure. We've been talking with Rene Bollier. He's the 3rd generation confiserie of Andre's Chocolate from Kansas City, Missouri. Tell me a little bit about how your wife is involved in the business and what she does.
So my wife, who I have been married to for 15 years, was a part of the business from the day we got married. She was in charge of mail order sales for years, and after we have 3 children, and we had twins 7 years ago. When the twins were born, both of us realized that it was just too much to continue to work a full-time job plus take care of our 3 kids. So she took about 5 years off. When she came back into the workforce, we had already trained someone to take over her position. So there really wasn't a defined role for her at Andre's. She's a very creative, amazing woman, and she had the opportunity to work with a branding company named Willoughby Design, that's local in Kansas City, and was with them for about 2 years. And in that 2-year process, we realized at Andre's that Willoughby could really help us with some of our branding to really tell the story of what Andre's is and what the history of Andre's is all about. So we worked directly with my wife and that company, Willoughby Design, to create some new branding for us. That branding, really, we brought it to the Fancy Food Show in New York 2 years ago, and that was the first time we kind of displayed the new branding, and it was so successful that I realized very quickly I could not handle the increased wholesale sales and interest myself. So one night, in talking with my wife about how I was going to structure this and whether we were going to hire someone specifically in charge of wholesale sales, we realized this was the opportunity to get her back into the business. And so she came back, about a year and a half ago. She's in charge of all marketing and wholesale sales. And it's one of the big reasons why I really feel like we had a great success in this short period of time with our national sales and with our wholesale sales, because she really does have a passion for the business. And then obviously being part of the family, I think people are real receptive to that whole idea that they're working directly with the family.
So is that, you were talking about the packaging, but if I read correctly, you brought this distinction to your packaging in a very traditional Swiss way. I don't pronounce this properly, but it's Scherenschnitt, I think. Finely cut paper to create scenery of the countryside of Switzerland. Is that the packaging you're talking about? Because it's quite distinctive.
Yes, no, that is so. The Scherenschnitt is, like you said, it's an art form, very traditional art form that's done in Switzerland and some other countries. We have some of that artwork up in the restaurant portion of our business, and the branding agency saw some of that, and they really fell in love with it and did some research about it, and really felt like that was one way that they could, or we could convey that Swiss heritage. So they brought in that chair.
No, that's fantastic. I know I'm getting the hook soon to ask you one last question. I really do want to ask you this question. Is what advice would you give to anyone wanting to get into the chocolate confectionery business?
I would tell them that make sure you have a passion for the chocolate industry, because it is a lot of work, and competition right now is fierce. There are some amazing chocolatiers out there doing some really innovative things. So you definitely need to continually find ways to set yourself apart, and there's very little room anymore for chocolate that is mid-level. I think there's so much high quality, exceptional chocolate out there that you got to be prepared to really work hard and ensure that your chocolate candies are exceptional all the time if you want to have success.
Well, thank you, Rene. Don, would you like to wrap things up for us?
Absolutely. Rene, your website for people?
Yeah, so the website is www.andres, ANDRES, chocolates with an S.com. So andreschocolates.com. And then we're always available at our retail location to answer any questions. And that number is 816-561-3440.
Thank you so much, Rene. A link to your website will be on Food and Wine Insider tonight, where you can hear this and every other past and future Food and Wine Insider show. Thank you so much, Rene, for being with us.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. I really do appreciate it, and it was fun.
Well, that's what we like to have on this program, fun. To be successful, most restaurant owners require extra capital from time to time. When you need funding to renovate, buy equipment, or manage cash flow, you don't have time to track down financial statements or wait weeks for a decision. That's where Cabbage can help. Cabbage gives small businesses access to a line of credit of up to $200,000. Apply online and you'll get a decision right away. Since Cabbage is a line of credit, you can take the exact amount you need. You never have to reapply to take additional loans, and you'll only pay for the funds you use. Cabbage has helped more than 230,000 businesses from every industry, and with $4 billion in funding, Cabbage is A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau and was named the Forbes Top 100 Companies twice in a row. Check out Cabbage at cabbageWithAK.com/foodandwine, and you'll get a $50 gift card when you qualify. That's KABBAGE.com/foodandwine.
Line of credit is subject to credit approval. See terms and conditions. All Cabbage business loans are issued by Celtic Bank, a Utah chartered industrial bank, member FDIC.
You've been listening to Food and Wine Insider with Ann Daw and Don Mazzella. Want to join us on a future show? contact us at foodandwineinsider.com. Until next time, have a passion for food, wine, and profits, and think of our program, Food and Wine Insider.